Welcome to the Perfectly Flawed podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. For those that don't know you, would you like to give a little bit of an overview of who you are?
My name's Ryan Maskelyne. I swim for Papua New Guinea. I grew up in PNG until I was at the age of 14, where I came to Australia for schooling. And yeah, I like to swim and I like to watch the NBA. That's pretty much who I am.
That's awesome. What was it like moving? Some people travel to other countries and it's really cool to see and experience new things, but I can imagine it's very different living in another country and, picking up your whole life and moving. What was that like?
Yeah, it was definitely a shock. I came to Australia for boarding school, so I was away from family, and I was in Ipswich, and I had some brothers and sisters in Australia, but they're all in Brisbane. Ipswich isn't that far, but it's a 45-minute drive, and so most of the year on the weekends my brothers might go out and do something together, but it was a bit too much of an effort to come and get me. So if anything, I just felt a little bit isolated, but I don't know, I've always been quite independent. I'm happy to live away from my parents. I live at home with mum now, which is amazing because I come home every night to a home cooked meal. But like from the ages of 14 to 20, I didn't live with my parents because I was at boarding school and then I was at college for a year. So at the time, I'm sure it was a bit of a shock for me, especially I was 14 years old. But now it's kind of like, I just don't think about it. It's just the norm. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I suppose you don't really know any different. So that's just how it was.
Yeah, exactly. And even thinking back, even on I'd see my parents like twice a year, because on holidays I'd have to be swimming training, so I'd stay in Brisbane and stay with my coach because I couldn't go back to PNG and go back to training 3 times a week and then expect to go well at age nationals or whatever. So I'd stay at my coach's house and we'd train 9 times a week, which is standard in swimming. So most of my holidays were spent in Brisbane away from family again. So, twice a year seeing my parents is pretty normal. And dad still lives in PNG. So with COVID, I've seen him twice since my 21st, and I'm about to turn 23. So it's all relative. For me, that's normal. But for some other people, they might be devastated by that. But I'm lucky to have these experiences, and everyone's different, so it's just how it is.
Yeah. Which, yeah, as I said, it's if that's how you brought up, you don't really know any different. You don't feel like you've missed out. That's just the norm. Do you think then, because you were in boarding school, that swimming, obviously, like I come from a swim background as well, so I know that it can be quite a close knit group, especially with your squad and you seeing each other so much. Like you often, I mean, especially in your case, seeing them more than anyone else. Do you think that sort of helped create a sense of family?
Definitely. For the first 6 months that I was at boarding school, like I said, I was going from training 3 times a week in PNG to trying to train 9 times a week coming to Australia. That was, if anything, the most shocking part. I was not ready for it.
Mm.
And for the first 6 months, I'd rock up to training maybe 4 or 5 times, and then I'd just be cooked. And it it was really tough. But once I made those friends, and I like these mates from school, I'm still really good mates with them, mates for life. Like, especially at the swimming pool, it made it a lot easier to go to training. But yeah, it was almost like a family because my coach at the time, Greg Fasala, I still go and see his daughters, catch up for food. My assistant coach, Jess Pfeffer, now she was like a mum to me in school, and I still catch up with her. So it really was a family at the time for me.
Yeah, for sure. So what inspired you to, like, obviously, you said you were swimming in PNG beforehand and then you came over here and bumped it up to 9. Was that something that you moved over for?
Yes and no. I was always going to come to Australia for high school, for boarding school. I'm the youngest in my family. I've got 3 older siblings, and they all went to boarding school. And my older brother was at Churchy, and I was enrolled to go to Churchy after I'd completed year 8 in PNG. But during year 7 in PNG, Greg Fasala from Ipswich Grammar came to do some scouting, and he ended up offering myself and a couple of other guys some scholarships. And for me, it wasn't about the money. The company my dad worked for, it was written into his contract that they'd pay for our schooling up till year 12. So I could have gone wherever I liked, but it was more the fact that someone had shown interest in me and that I knew that I had someone there. Whereas I feel like if I had just gone to Churchy, and I knew that I wanted to keep swimming, if I'd gone to Churchy, I knew I would have just probably fallen out of love with the sport. Especially at the time, I was keeping track of swimming in Australia a little bit, and I knew that Zach Sully Cook was at Churchy, and that's I know Zach is an amazing dude, but if I was at Churchy, there's no way I'd be swimming today. And so I'm really thankful that I got the opportunity to go to Ipswich, and it completely changed the course of my life.
Yeah. What makes you say that you don't think you'd be swimming if that was the case?
Well, if I had gone to Churchy, I would have, that they were a swimming school at the time. I don't keep up with GPS anymore, but they had all these good swimmers, and I would have gone in and just gotten flogged on my first day. And I'm sure the coach wouldn't have paid, too much mind to me. I'm not to say that he's not a great coach. It's just, I was coming from PNG, not a lot of background to me, not, maybe a little bit of talent, but I had a lot of work to do. Whereas he had all these swimmers that were already doing amazingly well on the age national stage. So I just think I wouldn't have had that attention that I think I would have needed to go further with the sport. And especially at GPS, like there would have been no need for me because I'm a breaststroker and Zach's a breaststroker, Olympic gold medalist, 200 breaststroker now. But at the time he was the person to be in Queensland and at that age in Australia. So I just think there would have been no need for me and therefore no attention, and I just would have given up.
Yeah. What has made you stay in swimming so long then? Because obviously, like, it's pretty full on from such a young age, like doing 9 sessions at 14. There's not many sports that require you to do that sort of training. Why do you think you've stuck around so long?
I love it. I love being hurt at training. I love getting flogged. There was a while in my life that I didn't. I think I'd keep swimming, but yeah, I stopped for a while and then realized that I was pretty much I wasn't diagnosed, all but diagnosed. I think I was depressed, and I came back to swimming after 4 months. 15 kilos overweight, and as soon as I got back in the pool, it's the sense of gratitude that once you finish a hard set, or training sometimes can be a slog, but I love racing. It's just everything about swimming. The mates you make, the level of commitment that it takes. That everyone in the pool around you has that same goal, and you're all like-minded, and it's an interesting environment. And obviously, I also have a very different perspective as I swim for Papua New Guinea, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's more difficult to make the team. I'm very lucky to be in my position. I make most Papua New Guinean teams because of the way that it is, and every day I count my blessings that I am from Papua New Guinea. But there's no way that I'd ever make an Australian team. I think I would have been close to making one junior Australian team in my life, and all these things have added up where I get to travel overseas and compete for my country. That's that's a lot of people's dreams, and I often take that for granted, unfortunately. But that's something that is really special, and that's kept me in the sport as well. But even there was a stage that I wouldn't be able to compete for PNG, and I knew that, and I still went back to swimming because I just couldn't stay away. I had to keep going because it was what made me happy.
Yeah. And you just get this high, like when you finish that set, like even though you're absolutely knackered and you've got nothing left in the tank, that high that you get, it's like, oh yes, like I finished that set, like how good. Or
Yeah.
even after a race and you hit the time that you wanted or place where you wanted, it's like, yes, like nothing beats that high. It's so hard to find that elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Even this Monday, I had like an unreal set. I've only been back in the pool since since Japan last year. I had 6 months where I was training 5 to 6 times a week, taking it kind of easy, going back to uni, trying to knock some subjects out of the way. And so I've only been back in the pool for 2 weeks now, 9 sessions a week, 3 gym sessions. And on Monday, I just had an unreal set and swimming faster than I've ever swum before. and that's due to a number of things. But when I finished that set, I was just, over the moon, and I was ecstatic. And it's not something that you can find. Like, it's almost comparable to like the adrenaline rush of like a roller coaster or something, but it lasts longer, and it just makes me happy. Like, I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, but it's also like different from, like, it is similar to, I understand what you mean with the roller coaster, but it's also, you've put in that hard work as
Yeah,
well. It's
you've
like,
earned it.
oh,
So
yes.
it feels so good.
Oh, I have so many questions I want to ask. I don't know where to start, but I think what you said before, where you took time out and, not necessarily diagnosed, but you were quite low and almost depressed, you would say.
Yeah.
What made you step away for that period of time, and what was that chunk of time like for you?
So in 2018, which was my first year out of school, I was at college at UQ. So I was living on campus, and college life at UQ is kind of similar to what you see college life in America, where everyone's just pissed all the time. So I kind of got sucked into that side of it a little bit. But and originally, when I went to college, I was still training, and I was planning on competing at the Commonwealth Games. But I had some Gold Coast Commonwealth Games. I had some passport issues, and that it was ridiculous in PNG at the time, because once you turned 18, you had to give up your dual citizenship. I'm very lucky that I'm an Australian and Papua New Guinean citizen. Once you turned 18, you had to choose which one. And going to uni, I chose my Australian, but then you had to reapply for your Papua New Guinean. It took me 18 months to get my Papua New Guinean citizenship back, and a couple of $1,000 as well. It's a ridiculous process that shouldn't exist, but anyway. And so 2 weeks before, not even 2 weeks before the Commonwealth Games, I was still on the team, training every day, committed. I was at college, but I wasn't drinking. I was just harrowing myself and praying that my passport was going to come through. Everyone kept telling me it's going to come through, it's going to come through. And then I can't remember the exact date, but I think on a Wednesday I got told that I wouldn't be competing, and it was like the next Monday that the Commonwealth Games started. So it was like 5 days before the game started. And that hit me pretty hard. I was really looking forward to doing my best, and Commonwealth Games would have been the biggest event I'd ever competed at. So it was going to be, for me, really special. And from there, that hurt a lot, especially like a week out. If they had told me months before, I could have just taken training easy until my passport stuff came through. But I was flogging myself, and it was really, really disheartening to have that done. And then from there I decided, oh, well, if you don't need me, that's okay. I just won't swim. And I quit and started while I was at college. So I was drinking every night. Every night I would have some beers, and then on Thursdays it was college night, so we'd go out and I'd go even harder. And then on Sundays we'd go out again. And every night you could find someone that was on the beers somewhere, and it just wasn't the best environment, especially if you're looking to be a performance athlete. I wasn't in a good environment, and so I got sucked into that for a bit, and my sleep schedule changed. I was going to sleep at 2, 3 a.m., waking up at 11. And one day I just woke up. My passport stuff still hadn't come through. And I woke up and I said, I can't do this shit anymore. It just sucks. Like I was at the time 90 kilos, and I was fat, and I hated myself, and I needed to do some sort of exercise. And that's one of the lowest times of my life. And then getting back into swimming really swimming really saved me. If I had kept going down that path, I don't think I'd be very happy with where I am or where I would be.
Yeah. And it's really hard. And I'm sorry that sort of was your experience. So yeah, it's challenging. And, those results hit hard because you care so much. Like, you wanted it so bad and you care so much about it. And that's why it hits home so hard. So it's challenging on how to navigate that. Do you think now, looking back that you would have done anything differently?
It's really hard to say. You know, I'm really not sure. I'd like to think that with my experience now, if I was left off a team, I'd love to keep training because knowing what I know now, that I love swimming. Like that's what it took for me to realize that I love swimming and I love training and I love competing. Even if I don't get to compete for my country, if I get to put up a time that's close to my best, that's all I can ask for. And so knowing what I know now, I think I'd still continue training, except the college environment. Again, it's so hard not to see, it's so hard to see all these guys going out drinking every night, looking like they're having the time of their life. And then you just sitting at home, waking up, hearing them come back at, 2 a.m. You've got to wake up at 4 to go training or whatever it is. I was training a long way away at that point, but yeah, so I'd like to think that I'd train a bit more, but it would still be tough.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, on the flip side of that, you said, on just recently that you had one of the best sessions ever and it felt amazing. What do you think led to that, given that you'd had so much time sort of to not necessarily off, but reduce load? Do you think that played a part as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so since July, yeah, like I said, I've been doing 5-6 sessions a week, maybe one gym session. And then I'm also at uni studying medical imaging. So I have to go on placement every 6 months for a couple of months. But I had a placement over most of all of November and most of December where I was working full time and trying to train around that as well. And I was just every day I'd go to work or go to training, then come home, have a quick feed, then go to work and get home. So I'd leave the house at 5:45 in the morning and get home at 6 o'clock at night, and I was just shattered. And that was every day. And on Saturdays I'd go to training as well. And that was our biggest set at the time. Then I'd have most of the Saturday off, and then on Sunday, I've got no money coming in. I had to work as well for an actual job where I could get paid because we don't get paid for placement. So I was getting flogged every day. Whereas now I've had all that time where I had a decreased load. Then I had Christmas and I had about 3 weeks over Christmas where I wasn't training at all. Should have been 2 weeks, but then I caught COVID. So I had to have a week of isolation. And that time off and really gave me the opportunity to realize that I wanted to go hard. Like all I want to do right now is swim. And I get home every day and all I do is, think about rest and recovery. I stretch and then I sleep. That's pretty much it. So that decreased load definitely has given me the opportunity to be better now because it's allowed my body to rest and recover. And also working under that increased load, my body's used to so much more. So I can give all of that energy back into training, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And I think it's interesting that you say like the 2 times where you've taken time out has made you realize how much you love it and how much you want more. How do you view rest now?
I love rest. Taking time out is very different to rest, I suppose, but every day, like I live at home with mum, like I said before, I live the dream. I go to wake up in the morning, I go to training, I come home, I have cereal or I make myself avocado on toast or whatever for breakfast. And then I go upstairs, watch a little bit of YouTube and then go to sleep. That's every day. And then I wake up again, go to training in the afternoon, come home and I've got a home cooked meal ready for me for dinner. So I rest, I sleep 2 to 3 hours during the day and then another 8+ hours at night. All I'm doing is resting. And so while I haven't been able to rest for the last few months, this last month I've been able to rest a lot, but previously I haven't been able to rest because of placement and uni and whatever else. I now view rest as something that is not mandatory, but I need it. It's something that I need. If I want to perform at my best, I need to rest. That's pretty much how I see it.
Yeah, I think it's sort of not so much underrated, but I think as athletes, we always want more and feel like we should always be doing something to be better. And it's the 1%ers and all those sort of things that we always talk about. But sometimes that 1% is sitting down on the couch and watching TV.
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
think that doesn't necessarily get spoken about, or we sort of sweep it under like, oh, but we're not doing anything. It's like, that's the point.
Yeah. 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 I love rest. And, whatever you need to do to make your body feel fresh for the next session, that's what you've got to do. So, and for me, that's rest. Like I'll do a little bit of stretching before, I always get to training, 45 to half an hour before training and do some stretching. And after I finish training, but when I get home, I'll roll out a little bit or I'll stretch. But other than that, it's all just rest, lie down, sleep, watch, just do whatever I need to do to make sure I'm ready.
Yeah, 100%. Now, you did go to Tokyo last year. What was that lead in like? And then even being there?
So the lead in was interesting. And I was going through a whole lot of stuff that I don't really want to get into. But down in trials was probably, apart from 2018, was probably one of the hardest times in my swimming career. I didn't swim as well as I would have liked to. Like I said, I had stuff going on at home. I shouldn't have expected much, but it wasn't. I didn't swim as well as I would have liked to, and I really wasn't happy with my results. And more than anything, I felt guilty. Like I remember watching the 200 breast A final. I was in the B final, and watching the swim after. I saw Zach swim and I was over the moon, and then I saw Matt Wilson and I was heartbroken. And because at the time no one knew that he was going to make the team, but I just felt so guilty. And why do I get to go at this time? At this stage, I already knew that I'd already been told by PNG that I was selected on the team, and so trials was. It wasn't essential for me, but I was looking at all these other swimmers and the guys that I train with and everything that had all these hopes and were trying to make the final or trying to make the team, and I just it was heartbreaking for me to see everyone else. And I just thought, I remember sitting up in the crowd one day and just bawling my eyes out, after I'd finished swimming, and just feeling like shit, thinking about, the world's unfair. Why do I get to go? I'm not half as good as half these guys. And I know now, like, that my predicament is very different to a lot of these people, but it's something that I do think about quite often. I it's not to say that I don't put in the hard yards. I give my all at training every opportunity I get to, but it's still something that weighs on me heavily. Like, some of my best mates, all they want to do is compete for their country, and I get to do that all the time. And it's just not fair. And life's not fair, and that's the way it is. But it just sucks. And I'm not trying to get pity or anything. I was staying with one of the guys that I swim with, and he was like, "Man, you train just as hard as any of us, if not harder. Like, don't beat yourself up." And I'm just like, "No, it's not right, man." That was tough on me because at the time I felt I didn't deserve any of it, and I really didn't. It almost made me not want to be there, which sounds ridiculous, and I hate saying it because every athlete would love to be in a similar position to me, where I get to go to all these amazing competitions, and I'm pretty much guaranteed to, and it's just not right. But it's also something that they don't really think about, how it weighs on you. That it helps that I put the effort in, but it still doesn't sit right with me, and it still weighs on me every day, and especially with all the guys that I train with. But yeah, so that lead-in was pretty tough. And both my races all of my races down at trials were really average, and I think that was the first time I was ever nervous for a race. I've never been nervous for a race before, and that's because I put expectations on myself. I wanted to make the Olympic B qualifying time to prove to myself that I deserved to be there, and I didn't. I got to go to the Olympics on a universality card, which is a wild card for countries that don't have anyone that's qualified, and I didn't do those times, and it really, really sucked at the time. And that putting all those expectations on myself made me nervous for my race, and I swam dog shit. Like it was some of the worst swims I've ever done. And so from that experience, I couldn't sit right with myself if I went home and half-assed it. I went home back to Brisbane because trials were down in Adelaide, and I flogged myself for the next 6 weeks. I did everything I could to make myself better so that I could have the perfect race at the Olympics. And I was also had a slight injury at the time, but that's not a big deal. But it was I'm happy with how I went at the Olympics, but that lead in with trials really being eye-opening to me, in that how unfair everything is probably what motivated me the most to not half-ass it. Like, I'm given this opportunity, so I need to take it and do everything I can with it.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine, well, I can only imagine because I'm not in that situation. And I'm sure, like, obviously it's quite a unique place to be as well. How do you navigate that? Because it's obviously something that is still in your mind. How do you process that and go in? Because standing behind those blocks, you have to be selfish to a point and believe in yourself that you're capable of doing it. So how do you block those sort of doubts out, and that, everything is sort of unfair? How do you block that out in order to race at your best?
Well, it's difficult because what I like to think when I'm behind the block, all I think about when I'm behind the blocks is my race plan. Then when I get up on the blocks, I just put faith in that I know that I've done the work, despite maybe being here because of the very, very privileged and lucky circumstances that I am. I have put in the work to be here as well. I've trained just as hard as anyone else here, and so as soon as I get up on the block, I just let my mind go blank and let the training do its thing. But yeah, it was really tough for a couple of weeks there when I was just after trials, and well, during trials and after trials, where a lot of people didn't make the team that wished they had, and I just it felt really guilty. And and everyone that I spoken to, Lani Pallister, who just missed the team, I went to a party with her before I went to the Olympics, one of my mates' house parties, and I didn't know her at the time, but I'd met her there, and she was really, really supportive, and everyone is always so supportive, and that it doesn't help. Like it makes it worse because everyone's so nice to you about it, but you still feel like you don't deserve to be there. But everyone's so nice about everything. And, I speak to Zach before we race and whatever, and he's like, oh yeah, what time do you have to go to, qualify for the Olympics or whatever? And because he knows I've been racing Zach for, I don't know, 8 years or whatever it is now. But he's familiar with the circumstance that I'm in. And, I'll say, oh, if I get the B time, I get to do 2 swims over there, but I'm pretty much already on the team. And, he's like, oh, that's awesome, man. Like, it's just, everyone's so nice and supportive, and swimming is such a great community, but it still sucks for me because I feel so guilty. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question because it's something I'm still dealing with.
Yeah. And both Zach and Lani have been on the podcast before, and both so genuinely lovely, kind people. So I can imagine that conversation taking place and them being your number one fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Lani, like, that was the first time I'd met her. She's since become one of my best friends. Like, she is just amazing. And, we take the piss all the time now, but we went to a house party after the Olympics, and I brought in my car a pillow and a blanket because, I'm not going to drive home. Sometimes I'll sleep in my car, but I ended up sleeping on my mate's floor. So I brought my pillow and my blanket in, but the blanket that I brought with me was my Tokyo Olympic doona thing, and Lani had just missed the team, and she was also staying at the place, and she slept on the couch, and she refused to touch my blanket, and I felt horrible because she is one of the most talented swimmers in Australia, and she works so hard, and she goes the extra mile on everything, and it just, that sucks. But she is still she's happy to laugh about it now, but it still has to hurt for her, and she's such a lovely person, and I'm glad that I've made a friend out of it, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's tricky. And I remember talking to her and she was very emotional when we spoke about that too. So, but I also know that she would 100% give banter about it now.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, she loves to chat shit, but she's such a good person. I'm really lucky to have people like her, not necessarily just Lani, but people like her that are all just so supportive of me. And even though they didn't swim as well as they would have liked to at trials, or they didn't just miss the team or whatever it was, they're still so supportive and only wish the best for me. And they've got to be wishing or thinking, he's so lucky, I wish I was in his spot or whatever. But they, they'll never say anything like that. They'll just, they're always just so supportive. And I suppose some of it comes from the people that I train with, they know that I've put in the work, but it's still something that I deal with today, and that I'll inevitably deal with in the future, no matter what, unless I start progressing to the point where I can compete with Zach, which I'd love to, and I work my ass off so I can, but it's realistically, I'm not at that stage just yet. But unless I'm one of the best in Australia and potentially potentially making Australia teams, then there's it's always going to weigh on my mind. In saying that, just I would never swim for Australia. I'm always going to swim for Papua New Guinea because that's my home and that's the right thing to do in my mind. Even though I have an Australian citizenship, I swim as a visitor in Australia every time I race, except for uni because it's uni. But I will always swim for PNG. And I said before about being close to making one of the junior Australian teams. I still went and competed at that comp, but I swam for PNG, and I just don't think I'll, even if I was competitive with Zach and Matt, I would never ever swim for Australia, and that's just a personal thing for me.
Yeah, 100%, and that's totally your choice, and that's home. It's representing your country. That's where you're from. That's part of your identity. So
yeah, exactly.
It's incredible though how important having such a good, strong support network behind you is though.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the key people in that is my coach, Sean Crow. He when I was going through all this stuff, he just told me, you train like an international athlete. Why don't you deserve to be there? Like, why not? And it's that helps a little bit, like knowing that I still work my ass off. But yeah, I've got all these amazing support networks around me, and I'm just really appreciative. And no one ever judges me or thinks less of me. They just, they're happy for me, and it's really awesome. And I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. If your younger self could see you now, how do you think they would react?
If they had a quick replay of my entire life up to now, I don't know, they'd see a lot of questionable hairstyles, that's for sure. I think they'd be proud. Like, I got to swim at the Olympics. That's everyone's dream. Like, well, everyone in swimming's dream. I'm still speechless. It's 7 months later. I don't know what to say. All I've ever dreamt about since 2008 was swimming at the Olympics for PNG. And so in 2008, I was still in PNG, and it's not a big deal for other countries, but in 2008, Ryan Pinney swam the 100-meter butterfly, made it to the semifinals, and then made it to the finals, and he was in lane 8 in the finals. And that is the best performance that PNG has ever had in any sport. He came last in the finals, top 8 in the world. And that's, the best performance PNG has ever had in the Olympics. And that's something that really stuck with me. And ever since that day, I've always wanted to swim for PNG and just at the Olympics. And, you know, many, like one of my best mates also swam for PNG, and he, unfortunately, in 2016 got locked out because Ryan Penny was still swimming at the time, and got chosen over him. There was a potential that they could both go, but because they both had a B time, but everything fell through at the last minute for him, kind of similar to what happened to me in 2018. And, you know, that was really heartbreaking for him. And I'm very lucky to be in the position that I'm in, that I've gotten to achieve my dream. And yeah, I think if my younger self saw me, I'm proud. Like, what else could you ask for?
Yeah. And on a similar wavelength then, you know, Ryan was someone that you looked up to. I mean, you're also Ryan. So how do you feel being the next Ryan and having someone like that looking up to you in that same way?
Yeah, it's so weird because, you know, I'm like 22 years old. I don't feel 22. I still feel like a 15-year-old. You know, I don't feel that old. But to think that people look up to me, and I even see it at training and back home. I haven't been back home since the Olympics because I haven't had the chance, but I know back home there are like, I don't know how many kids, and I see comments on Facebook and that sort of thing, people cheering me on and supporting me. And it's just insane for me to think that these people who don't know me personally at all, but they've got all this love and support for me just because I swim for their country. Or even at training, there's a couple of younger guys that swim breaststroke, and you know, they, before their race, they'll come up to me and ask me, you know, what should I think about, or, you know, what's a good race plan? I was like, speak to the coach, but do whatever Sean tells you to do. But, you know, these guys, as much as I like to joke around with them, they're only 16. Joke around with them in training, I still like, I can still see that they look up to me. They don't want to make it out like they look up to me, but they definitely, like, there's some sort of admiration there, and I really appreciate it. And it's just, to be in this position is surreal. And I just want to take that opportunity and use it in the best way that I can. So, you know, I'm going to give these kids all the advice that I can and try and use my, I don't want to say platform because I don't have a social media presence or anything like that, but use my status in the best way that I can to help anyone that's younger than me that, you know, is inspired by me or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good way of putting it rather than saying like platform, whatever, like your status and what you've sort of achieved and using that as a platform to then help others, I think is awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
So given that going to the Olympics has been your childhood dream and you've achieved that, what's the next goal? What are your upcoming goals?
As soon as I finished my race at the Olympics, I went and spoke to my coach, and pretty much the first words out of my mouth was, I want more. It, you know, I swam at the Olympics. I swam in the heats. I did a small PB, but I was ecstatic. I got to swim at the Olympics, but I'm not satisfied. Nowhere near it. I'm short term. I'm looking at Com Games this year and thinking that the finals are within reach. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. That's what I'm working towards. These 6 months is looking at the Com Games and trying to. I'm bypassing World Championships because of uni again. I've still got a couple of years left, so I won't be able to make it to World Champs. So I'm putting all my energy towards Com Games and trying to make that finals, and that's a stepping stone for hopefully Paris in a couple of years. If I could repeat something similar to what Ryan Penny did in, you know, 2.5 years time, and make a final at the Olympics, you know, that would be unreal. And that's a long-term goal for me, and that's something that I may or may not achieve, but that's what I'm working towards.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's achievable, it's doable, it's been done before, so it's definitely possible.
Yeah, well, hopefully, I guess only time will tell, and if I put in the effort, hopefully it will happen, but we'll see.
Yeah. Now I should do 3 questions to sort of finish with. And the first one is, what is something that you're most proud of about yourself?
I think the thing that I'm most proud of was that time in 2018 that I was able to wake up and realize that I wasn't happy with who I was becoming and where I was in my life, and being able to use that and go back to swimming. That's probably something that, yeah, I'm most proud of, is being able to recognize that I was wasting my time, and yeah, putting myself back, even though I was 15 kilos overweight and it was going to be a long slog to get back to be fit. Having the perseverance to get back there is probably something that I'm most proud of.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, it's one thing to recognize like, hey, this isn't working, but it's another thing entirely to actually do something about it and pick up the pieces.
Yeah, definitely.
What is your favorite quote and or the best piece of advice that you've been given?
My favorite. I'm not a big quotes guy. There's always that Michael Phelps at Under Armour ad before 2016. That's and at the end, I'm not exactly sure of the quote or who said it, but it's something along the lines of, it's what you do in the dark that puts you in the light. And
Oh,
yeah, that's I don't like many quotes, but that one is, yeah, I really like that one. So
I haven't heard that. I'm gonna go have to look that up now. I'm
yeah,
intrigued.
that's one of my favorite ads. It's if I'm ever feeling like unmotivated or whatever, I'll just watch that ad, and yeah, it's pretty unreal.
There's a video. I don't know what the title of it is, or if it's an ad or what it is exactly, but it's super motivating. Phelps is in it, but it's not like his video, and like Ryan Lochte's in it as well. And it's like a swim. I think it's called like Rise and Grind. It's like a 3-4 minute video.
I have seen this before. Yeah,
Ah,
yeah, that's
so
good.
good.
This one's only like maybe a minute long, but
Okay.
it's yeah, definitely anyone that's listening, go watch that, because that will give you the motivation to go to training this afternoon, or yeah, do whatever
Yeah,
you need to do.
so good. The last question is any tips or advice for anyone that is listening?
Um, that's tough. I think just one, trust your coach. Always number one rule is trust your coach. But advice is stick to it. If you're doing all the right things, then at some stage everything will fall into place, and you'll swim that PB, or you'll make that final, or whatever it is. Swimming is by definition a slog. You go into training every week and you do the same thing and you just hurt yourself. But if you stick to it long enough, the results will come. So definitely don't feel disheartened if you're not swimming where you'd like to be, but yeah, try and stick to it, and trust yourself and trust your coach.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's been awesome chatting to you and hearing your perspective on things. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.